Following slide is just extra practice for you, so I'm going to have you do this yourself. For the non-indicative forms for didωμι, again, the stem is given by the principal part for both indicative and non-indicative moods. There's a couple of things you have to keep in mind for the non-indicative moods, and I'll walk you through it. We won't go over the entire paradigm, but we'll go over some examples so you can go through the entire paradigm yourself on your own. The nice thing about the me verbs is for the non-indicative moods, you only really see two tenses being used: the present and the aorist. And remember, for non-indicative moods, there's no sense of time built into the verb. The sense of time is context dependent as it's used in the sentence. So here's your principal part. You have didωμι for the present tense, and you have edoka for the aorist tense. And the stem, you're going to see how the participles formed in the present tense, and also in the aorist tense. You're going to see how the subjunctive is formed in the present tense and the aorist tense, the infinitive in the aorist and present tense, and the imperative in the aorist and present tenses. So here's your principal part. So when you look at the present stem, there's just a friendly reminder that all present stems have that iota reduplication. And remember that reduplication has nothing to do with time, but kind of action. So reduplication is retained in the non-indicative moods, where the augment is not. There's no augments in the non-indicative moods. So for the participle, the nominative masculine singular form is deduce. And this is not as helpful because we really do need to know what the genitive singular form is. So if the genitive singular form is didontos, and we can see how from deduce, this is the nominative masculine singular form is the irregular form, but from the genitive singular form, didontos, you have that same stem. So really, you already know the present participle form. Once you have the genitive stem didontos, you can go deduce, didontos, didonti, didonta, and you just go all the way down the paradigm just as if it was luo. What about the aorist tense? Well, the nice thing about the non-indicative moods is that the non-indicative moods and the present tense forms and the aorist forms the non-indicative moods most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, look exactly the same, except the present tense has iota reduplication, the aorist tense does not. The present tense has the iota reduplication, the aorist tense does not. So what do the aorist participles look like? Well, instead, since it's aorist, there's no iota reduplication. You have deduce for the nominative singular form, but look, dontos for the genitive singular, and then all you have to do is, knowing this stem for the genitive singular, just follow the rules for luo to form the participle. It's deus, dontos, donti, donta, dontes, donton, do see or sin, and dontos. And those are the forms. And the reason why the aorist looks this way is that for non-indicative forms, most of the time, but again, not all the time, the one verb that doesn't do this is histemi, I stand. But for almost every other me verb, it's the second aorist forms that are used, not the first aorists. So for non-indicative moods, for the indicative moods, you still see the first aorist being used. So this is for the indicative. The kappa aorist is used for the indicative moods, but for non-indicative moods, it's the second aorist form that's used, which means that it looks just like the present suffix endings, except the stem is different. Whereas with the present stem, you have the iota reduplication. With the second aorist stem, you don't have it, and those are the forms for the participle. Okay, this is getting a little messy, so what I want to do is kind of clear the board before we finish up with the subjunctive, the infinitive, and the imperative. There, that's better. Just remember again that the aorist for didomi is the second aorist. Therefore, really the difference between the present tense and the aorist tense for these non-indicative moods will simply be in the change of stem. And the present tense stem is easily recognizable because it always has iota reduplication, but the aorist tense does not have that iota reduplication. And for the subjunctive, you're used to seeing for luo, the subjunctive endings being o, ace, a, omen, ate, oc. So you're used to seeing these case endings with the subjunctive. Now, the thing is that with the didomi verbs, you'll notice that the stem goes long, so da becomes do. And if you had to choose which is more powerful, the omega or the eta here, omega or the eta, it's the omega that's more powerful. And so what happens is all the etas get bumped off by the omega. And so the forms will be dido with the eta gone, the subscript moves here. And the final form will look like this. So dido, didos, dido, didomen, didote, and didocircin. And then for the aorist, it looks exactly the same as a second aorist in terms of the suffix endings, except it uses a different stem. There's no iota duplication. So this is simply do, dos, do, domen, dote, docircin. Let's clear the board for the infinitive. So for the infinitive, here we have the present active form, didoni, and then we have the aorist active infinitive form. The aorist active infinitive form, dunai. If you wanted to just simply know what the middle and passive forms are, we can write these out really quickly. Any non-indicative mood is going to base itself on the principal part. So you have reduplication for the middle form, and then it's the short vowel, and then das thigh, and then the middle in the present tense, the middle and passive infinitive forms are the same. So didoni, didasthai, didasthai are the infinitive forms for the aorist. So dunai is the active aorist active infinitive to give. The middle form uses the short vowel, so it's das. So it's das thigh, and the passive form uses a different stem. And I wrote it out here, edathen. So this is the aorist passive principal part. So it's going to be our datheni. So no augments. Dunai, dasthai, datheni. And lastly, for the imperative forms, you have didu for the second person singular and das for the second person singular here. These are the present imperative forms and the aorist imperative forms. But if I wanted to do third person singular, second person plural, third person plural, it'll look, again, it'll have the same suffix endings as luo. So you have didu, which is give, and then let him give would be didato. You all give, or you give, but you're addressing a group, it's date. And then let them give is didatosan. So it has the same. Remember that second person singular, it's irregular, so we sometimes we can't anticipate what the suffix ending is, but the to, te, tosan is something that we're all expecting. And then again, The aorist imperatives, remembering that this is again a second aorist form, it's going to look exactly like the present imperatives, except it's going to use a different stem. So we still have the irregular ending for the second person singular, but then the rest of it's predictable: to, te, and to, san. In this case, it's not with the iota reduplication, but simply with dato, date, dato-san. And those are the aorist imperative forms. And with that, we're done with the paradigm for didomi. We